I want to read a text that I got this morning to wake me up from my buddy Paul Simpson, 71-year-old man, class of Reardon alumni. He goes, Shasky, I played 2 seasons with Willie at the Stick. I was a vendor at Candlestick in 1966 and 1967 when I was 13 and 14 years old. Mays was in his prime. Vendors had to get to the ballpark 3 hours before the game. You got your assignment, and then you went out to watch batting practice. We all did. What a thrill. Then we watched the game while selling peanuts and sodas. We just stop and watch. Saw more than 100 Willie games those 2 years. The greatest job I ever had. Willie Mays had an aura of happiness and enthusiasm for baseball that was infectious. He instilled a love in the game for me that carries on to this day. His passing marked the end of a 71-year-old man's youth. I will miss him immensely. And he calls himself Pablo, a.k.a. Paul Simpson. And so, Paul, if you're out there, it almost brought me to tears. I've seen an outpouring from people we all know, whether it's Keith Hernandez, whether it's other people in the Giants organization. I know Bob Melvin had some just incredible things to say about Willie Mays. We've heard all the crazy stories. We're going to hear from John Miller this morning.
Dave Sword as well.
I don't think we can stop talking about Willie Mays. And this is not just somebody, at least in this area, that we can ever forget. Now, I love hearing those kinds of stories because I truly believe that sports at its core is about an emotional attachment. It's kind of the same conversation we've been having for 5 years regarding the Farhan stuff. Look, it's not transactions. It's not just about winning. There's more to it. And I think the more and more and the deeper I get with the whole Willie Mays connection to everyone, very few people bring up the amount of MVPs or even the amount of home runs or the amount of World Series wins, which is only one. It's more about how he made you feel. It's more about the joy that he exuded as a player. And I think that so many times in this modern, and we're guilty. I'll raise my hand. We're guilty. The way we talk about sports is so like, he won 6 titles and that guy won 11 titles and he only won 1. And I'm not hearing any of that with Willie Mays. And I think the purity of the love of the game and how a player played is the biggest takeaway for me. And I feel like I need to do a better job as someone who's in front of a microphone, kind of campaigning and championing those who exude that, like a Steph Curry, even like a Patrick Mahomes, even though he has the winning attributes and things like that. That we need to get back to the meat and bones, the heart of the game.
What I thought about yesterday a lot, thinking about the Warriors and what they're going to do with their roster. And I wonder, 888-957-9570, because obviously we have a lot of people who've called the station yesterday with memories of Willie Mays. And they've been fortunate to watch Willie Mays, and they've been fortunate to watch Stephen Curry. I would love to hear from people who have watched both, because I see the joy that Steph Curry plays with. When I watch Steph Curry over the years, and I've been very, very blessed to be able to cover Steph Curry in most of his career, you just get joy. You get a smile. You get a smile when you watch him play. You get a smile when he's dribbling the ball. You get a smile when he's hitting the three and he's shimmying or whatnot. He just plays with that boyhood joy, that kid joy that we had when we were 10, 12, 14 years old, picking up the game for the first time and playing the sport, watching the legends and having that same enthusiasm for the game. I get that from Stephen Curry all the time. You get that from Mahomes all the time. But for people here in the Bay Area who've been blessed, Mays, McCovey, Rick Barry, Wilt for a couple years, Nate Thurman, Al Addles, later on Chris Willard, Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, obviously Montana, Rice, Lott. But when it comes to Curry, because he seems like he has that gravitational pull and that connection to the community where he's embraced this community, whether it's Oakland, Alameda, San Francisco, it doesn't matter. He's a Bay Area guy now. And Willie became a Bay Area guy, basically spending the rest of his life here in the Bay Area. For the people who have been fortunate to watch both of them, how similar are they when it comes to bringing a joy to their individual professions? What is the joy? Because that's every time I see Willie Mays highlights, he's smiling left and right. And whenever you watch a Steph Curry highlight, he's smiling and having fun. and that connection he has with kids, Willie had it. He had that same connection.
It feels like to me so many of the people from his own generation and then the next generation after him, I'm talking about Willie for a second here, they wanted to play like Willie. They wanted to run like Willie. They wanted to play defense like Willie and carry themselves like Willie. It does feel similarly an entire generation of players in basketball post Steph Curry sure as hell try to play like him.
Right.
And they all seem to have unbelievable respect for him. Now, there's a whole nother conversation about, his contemporaries, his peers who played alongside of him and went against him. I think it took a little longer for those guys to embrace him. But now you're seeing even LeBron James, one of the number one foes to Steph Curry. And Steph came for all the things LeBron thought he was going to have. Even he has not bowed down, but he's acknowledged the greatness of Steph Curry. You can't watch a youth basketball game today without seeing the impact of Steph Curry.
No doubt.
I see it all the time.
Doubt.
I mean, I see it in the layup line. Now we don't do layup lines. You know what we do?
They pull up from three.
Well, you're working on your mid-range. You're working on your three-point shot in the layup line. And that never was a thing.
So Willie Mays been a 5-tool player. And the 5 tools of baseball, obviously, he's hitting for average, hitting for power, fielding, throwing, and running. And Willie Mays can do all those things. He can field, he can throw, he can hit for power, he had speed, he had arm strength. And you think about the joy he brought with those tools every single day on the baseball diamond. And Stephen Curry bringing that same joy. And you can, whether or not he's a two-way player on the basketball court, a defensive stalwart, Steph Curry's devastation offensively would just blow teams away.
It was overwhelming.
It was just they couldn't handle it. Mm-hmm. They couldn't handle it at all. But we've been fortunate. Think about that Bay Area. We've had Joe Cool, Ronnie Lott, Roger Craig, Jerry Rice, Rick Barry, Mays, McCovey, Bonds, Kit, all these stars, Lincecum, Bumgarner, Kay, later on down the road, Pablo Sandoval. Of course, you have Patrick Willis and company. I would stack our legends with any region in the country.
Don't you think Lincecum? He's not. I'm not even trying to compare Lincecum to Mays, but the aura of Lincecum is so unique. It truly does feel like no other pitcher will ever be able to capture our hearts the way Tim Lincecum did.
No, there's nothing like it, and that's why we talk about that void that Willie Mays left by passing away, being an ambassador for this franchise. Obviously, you're not going to be able to fill that void up. You're not going to be able to fill that void. But you see Barry Bonds out there, Rick Wood in Birmingham, Alabama, with the softball game and say, hey, it was really cool.
Those old Yankee jerseys. I'm just such a sucker for those.
I'm not sure if Bonds even wants that role, to be that type of ambassador like his godfather, Willie Mays. There can only be one Willie Mays. Bonds he doesn't have the charisma as a Willie Mays. I think he could, but his relationship with the media was so bad that there's no coming back from that. Barry's not going to sit down with just anybody and talk shop. He's not. He's warming up. He's starting to open up with a lot of people. But that's not what Barry. So a guy like Tim Lincecum, and look, I'm sorry, I didn't name the A's. You're right. Reggie Jackson, Vida Blue, Catfish Hunter, Canseco's. I'm sorry, A's fans. I didn't mean to do it. But you also had your stars as well. So add that to the equation. But I just don't know what giant retiree is going to be able to have that same connection 40 years down the line. Like, is Posey going to have that same connection with this community? I don't know. He's a little understated.
He is, but I mean, in terms of, are we talking like getting a loud pop, or are we talking about just being mystified to be in someone's presence? Because that's what it feels like from the older crowd and even the younger crowd, like to be like literally like you're touching someone who almost felt holy.
Not only that, but who can like resonate 40 years down the line? Because I don't know if Lincecum 30 years from now, how many kids are going to be like, oh man, the great Tim Lincecum? Are they going to talk about Lincecum the same way we talked about Mays without watching Mays play?
Well, I didn't watch Marichal, and I still think of him in that mystical way.
Exactly,
but he's levels down, and I'm not trying to diminish Juan Marichal's significance, but he feels levels down from where Mays was. I mean, Mays felt one step away from a Greek god. You know what I mean? Like that's, and I think Bonds at a time, I do believe when Bonds is at the game, I feel it in the stands. People go crazy.
They go crazy. But how
But
crazy?
he's not Mays.
He's not Mays.
Mays was universally beloved.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And so that void, it just stinks. And I'm just thinking about all the days where they're going to be honoring, the 62 Giants team or, honoring individual accomplishments and how Mays is not. I still haven't gotten over that aspect, is that Mays is not going to be there at the Yard anymore. I'm like, one of my favorite things. And, when I get to New York this summer, I'm going to New York later on this summer, and I get there the day of Old Timers Day at Yankee Stadium, and I was like, damn it, I wish I had an earlier flight. Because that's something I always wanted to experience, to see all the old Yankee legends. Because I'm a sucker for that stuff. When the legends come back, when you see all the 49ers and you see the six-shooter, Tim Harris, walking in the back of the end zone, and he's chopping it up with Bryant Young. You get what I'm saying? And you got Jesse Sapolo and Guy McIntyre at training camp. And Keena Turner is always walking around. I'm a sucker for that stuff. And our legends, slowly but surely, there's a big gap with the Giants. Now we got Will Clark, but, where's Kevin Mitchell at? He hasn't been around as much. You know what I mean?
You bring that up, and every time somebody gets to third base, and I see the Marine, a.k.a. Matt Williams there, and Matt played for a couple different teams after the Giants. I feel a certain way. I see him, he's got that look in his face, and he wears his pants almost identical to the way he wore them in the late 80s. It's just, I don't know, man. I feel a certain way about it. But again, Matt Williams is levels below what you're talking about. But in terms of my nostalgic connection, I still do get that with certain players. Yeah. Will Clark, I does that to a degree for me.
So, you ask why nobody ever brings up Willie Mays' 2 MVPs in 22 years or just one championship, even though he went to 3 World Series.
It's just not a part of...
It's not a part of the lore. We also understand how hard baseball is.
Yeah.
We understand that. At 510, Xfinity Mobile text line, baseball's never about championships growing up. So many great players do win championships. Billy Williams, Ernie Banks, Carl Yastrzemski, Willie McCovey. I was Ted Williams won a World Series championship, and we still love Ted Williams. So the conversation, and as 510 said, you appreciated great players for their performances no matter what. They gave it all they had. New York fans give automatically. They love him, despite only going to 1 postseason.
It's a game of failure.
Yep.
That's the number one thing. And I think the sports narrative over the last 15 years has been hijacked. Let's put that to the side for a second. Failing 7 out of 10 times means you become Willie Mays.
Yep.
A 301 lifetime batting average. It's a game where, if you can get into the 6th or 7th inning as a starting pitcher, you've done well, right? Whereas almost all the other sports, it's a game of 50% or better in terms of what you're trying to achieve for success rates. It's a game of failure, and you're going to have errors. You're trying to limit the amount of damage that's done. And I think that's the hardest part. When I look at the current modern game relating to the youth, one of the biggest difficulties I have with 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds up to 15, accepting that you're going to fail way more than you're going to succeed. And it's very difficult to get through that mental hurdle. So as you talk about, all these guys who didn't win championships, one of the greatest pitchers of the last 40 years is Clayton Kershaw. His entire career is rife with failure. Yep. And yet he is one of the most prolific left-handed starters the game's ever seen.
Yep, especially failures in the postseason on the biggest stage. That's why it gets heightened a little bit there. But even I think about Charles Barkley and the way Charles Barkley's talked about. People forget. They don't even know that Charles Barkley had 44-24 in a Game 7 against Seattle to go to the NBA Finals.
Baddest
44 points and 24
seen.
Rebounds.
Come on.
And, he kind of is a laughing. People laugh at him because of his TNT takes. But people forget Barkley was a badass. We don't talk about him much, but Karl Malone was a badass. And I know he's got some stuff off the court that I don't condone, but he was a damn badass.
As time's gone on, do you think we look, because I saw A-Rod and Jeter yesterday on the field, do you think people still, A-Rod's one of the greatest baseball players of all time. Yes, he did steroids. He's got the longest suspension in the history of the game.
Got 1 ring.
But he's one of the greatest, most talented baseball players who ever lived.
Ken Griffey Jr. never won a ring. Think about how revered.
I love Ken Griffey.
Think about how we talk about Ken Griffey Jr.
He
could do no wrong.
They had a side-by-side, and there was a lot of people from the 90s saying, Griffey's my favorite player or one of the greatest players I ever saw. And it was Willie Mays, all his stats alongside Griffey. And
it blew him away.
It wasn't even close. Griffey's one of the greatest players and has a 13-year run that you could compare to anyone not named Willie.
Yep. No, we don't ever bring up the fact that Ken Griffey Jr. never won a World Series. We don't do that so much in baseball. That is
Because it's a game of failure.
In baseball, it's almost acceptable. It's like, man, if you do get there to the World Series, it's an accomplishment. We understand how hard it is, but we don't knock people for not winning World Series per se. Like Bonds, sure, he'll get there. He never won a World Series. But we also understand the dude was all-time great.
I mean, come on.
The dude was all-time great. We do it in football and basketball so damn much. And even in basketball, you look at all the teams that have won rings.
Yeah.
It's not a lot. Like, it's the Celtics with 18, the Lakers with 17, and then the Warriors with 7. And then you got a bunch of teams who's won basically 4. The Spurs with their 5.
But I think
that's it. It's not like it's been some parity-driven league.
No. But I would say this. I do believe the way we talk about sports is heavily dictated as a society, at least externally. I don't know what conversations amongst friends are probably different, and it varies along generation lines and demographics. It feels like the line of demarcation for me was LeBron James, Skip Bayless. And that's when this entire, just the sports joy and how we talk about sports, everything kind of changed right then and there. Like, for example, Tom Brady. I believe Tom Brady is one of the greatest football players of all time. But everyone immediately brings up 7 rings.
Yeah. Instead
of, I think he's the smartest pre-snap player, even more so than Peyton Manning I've ever seen in my life. I think he's deadly accurate. I think he had a completely underrated arm. I thought his pocket presence in terms of feeling the pressure for a guy who couldn't move as well as some of his contemporaries is one of the greatest ever. Yet you never hear any of those things. It's like, well, he just won the 7 rings. And it does feel like the national narrative has been hijacked in terms of
it has
actually, and you say this all the time, can we just talk basketball? Yeah. Can we talk hoop? And I think a lot of these things have been hijacked by our media, and we're a part of it.
And it's kind of shaped the way people like to inject their sports conversations. Debate shows.
Yeah.
Debate shows, debating, oh, well, he ain't got a ring. Oh, he's not getting a ring. Like the Niners have had all-time great years. And Debo and Kittle and Juszczyk and Warner may never win a ring. We'll remember them as great 49ers, but nationally they'll get forgotten.
Of course.
Because they didn't win the ring.
Look at Willis.
That's unfair. That is unfair. It is very unfair, but that's the culture we're in. So how do we get it back? I don't think we're ever going back as long as these debate shows are existing. Getting back to just appreciating. Because everybody always goes, well, what did he do in the playoffs? For a long time, Barry Bonds had one great postseason.
Yeah, it was 0-2.
0-2. Other than that, he failed, but you don't get to the postseason without a Barry Bonds.
No.
Nobody ever brings that up.
Well, the sample size is really small. I mean, I look at the Dodgers last year, and I said to everyone, I was like, hey, look, it's Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts, and the two of them could just have a bad 4 or 5 games. Right. It happens. It's baseball. Small sample size. I'm watching Michael Conforto. He's 3 for 47 since coming back from the IL. He could easily, flip it around and be 14 of 25 in a 7-game stretch and be red hot. So, yes, to your point, like anything can happen. And that's where I go back to like someone like Derek Jeter, and you look at his postseasons, and he had a big body of work, and it was outstanding.
It was outstanding. He came through. 888-957-9570 if you want to share more stories about Willie Mays. The Rickwood game is today. Rickwood, Birmingham, Alabama. Oracle Park will be showing the game. If you could get down there at 12 o'clock, that's when the gates open. You'll be able to sign some condolences books on the warning track during the game. Gates open again at 12 p.m., and you could remember Willie Mays down there at Oracle Park. I saw a text there because I was wondering, because I'm not going to lie to you, I've been looking for a Willie Mays jersey, and the one I found was like $700.
Oh, that's the Michelin. That's right.
Yeah, no, it is.